my God, is it our turn now? This is something we never thought we would have to experience. Like we're like literally, we're not even supposed to be here today. We fought, we created laws, we did all the things, we did all the right things, and in order to not be here. But yet, like, damn, like here we are.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 4 of I'm Not Even Supposed to Be Here Today, conversational, cultural savvy podcast for folks trying to make sense of a world that has gone sideways. We're here to unpack the issues that boggle our minds, all rooted in a little history, a little culture, a little humor, a little group therapy. Today, a lot of group therapy, I think, and a little humility. I am your host, Chris Bevelo, owner of Bearing 287, an organization fighting the good fight to make the world a better place for all, and the sponsor of the show. I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Des, who is a social impact comm strategist by day and who spends her nights remixing history to make sense of the present. Hello, Des.
Tomorrow, Christopher.
How are you?
Well, just waiting in the drudgery of our existence today. The usual. How about you?
The same. It's brutally cold here today. So it just, in some ways, that adds to the wah of it all, because there's a lot of wah going on now. But in other ways, I think it's, being in the Twin Cities, it's maybe a bit of a blessing. It was very cold this weekend, so I think maybe that calms some things down. We'll see.
Yeah, but y'all were out there protesting hard. I think there was like a ice sledding where you had essentially like different protest sleds with like y'all were doing the damn thing this past
Have you seen
weekend.
the videos of that?
I saw a little bit.
So
Yeah.
amazing. Oh my gosh. What I don't know is whether that was a pre-existing condition, like whether that was, because we do have festivals in the winter where people create pretty cool sleds. So I don't know if that was just that and they kind of turned it into a protest theme. But some of them were hilarious. Like there was if you're from up here, you're familiar with a certain brand of de-icer. It's purple, and I can recognize the label. And somebody just created a 12-foot tall bottle of purple de-icer and sled down that went down the hill.
I think that's
Pun
what I saw. I didn't
intended.
know what it
So good. It's so good. I do think humor is underappreciated, not in terms of the situation we're dealing with, but in how to kind of deal with it directly. So
I, on behalf of the rest of the Black community, would agree.
yeah, how so?
Because we are so unserious. I mean, we are like we live all the things that occur to us, but we always have that sense of humor, and that's what kind of gets us through. Like I always feel weird because I don't know if it's just like just my response or like trauma response, but whenever I'm in a anxiety driven period or experience or whatever, like I giggle, which is kind of off putting to other people because they're like, what do you get? I'm like, I don't know. It's nervous laughter.
Yeah.
But also I'm constantly thinking of, what does this kind of remind me of? But I think that's a lot of times what we use to cope as a community is humor because like you laugh to keep from crying, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah, let's dive into this a little bit more because we came together today to not talk about humor. So that might be something we want to roll in at the end of the pod on how do we deal with what's going on today. We want to talk more about fear because that's come up a lot recently and the different kind of fear people have, understandably in my community and other communities, not just geographic communities, but it's real. It's a real thing.
Yeah, it's happening. And for me, I didn't know what would come, but I remember I was home for Thanksgiving back in 2024. This was right after the election. and I was hanging out with my brother and my cousin, my young cousin. So these are both black men in their 30s. You know, they've had a number of different experiences and just kind of like, wow, like I've had a very different life comparatively. Even though we grew up in the same household or family, the three of us have had very different experiences. But I remember telling them, I was like, I don't know how to say this, but you know, with this reelection of Trump, I have a feeling that the three of us, our generation, we are all millennials. We're going to be seeing and witnessing things that we never thought we would experience. My mom, she's in her 70s now, and of course, grew up during the civil rights movement. And I was telling them, I'm like, I just have a hunch that we might be called the N word to our face, which is not something we would have ever considered being a thing. I don't know, but just be careful, stay cognizant of everything, stay woke, because I think it's about to get real here. And, you know, again, not knowing what that's going to look like. And that, of course, you know, from inauguration day, it's just been like hit after hit after hit. And starting with this spring and summer, we're sending in ICE troops in different cities all across the country, like targeting. And that, you know, just because they've moved on to the next city doesn't mean that there isn't still presence in those original cities as well as others. Like the fight is continuing. But especially seeing how violent and the death that had occurred more recently here in Minneapolis, it just got me thinking about, my God, we might be experiencing stuff that none of us expected, stuff that might not have even happened. Or at least our generations, the kind of violence on this soil than we could have ever even imagined. I don't know what was your thinking. I don't know. Did you have any kind of thoughts when you first got elected of like what might occur?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, the thing that I heard over and over and that I agreed with was, look, the first go around, I think there was two things in play. One, he didn't know what he was doing. He didn't know anything about being president, what that entailed, the powers, any of it, which actually worked in the favor of less chaos. And he had people around him because of that, I think, that were, you know, not necessarily in alignment with my alignment with politics and things, but reasonable people, people to tell him like, you can't do this and you can't do that. And it, you know, you'd hear the warnings. Look, this next go around, he knows exactly, one, he knows exactly what he can and can't do. Two, I mean, he's been given authority that didn't have before by the Supreme Court that he's immune, you know. And three, he's not gonna tolerate anybody that disagrees with him. So he's gonna put in sycophants. He's gonna put in people that are 100% aligned with him and will do whatever he wants. And that was the fear, and that is what's happening. You know, you have to wonder sometimes how much of what's going on he even knows about. I think he'd be fine with everything that's going on, but whether he's driving, you know, ICE deployments, I have no idea. I seriously doubt it. I think he's just like, do whatever you want, do whatever you want. He's focused on some things like tariffs, the ballroom. Like there's some things where Greenland apparently is stuck in his craw. But that was the fear that I had most of, like, okay, you know, you'd hear these people say like, hey, it's going to be different this time. Because people, you know, you'd hear, well, it was fine last time. It wasn't that big a deal, other than 1 million people dying in this country because of the pandemic, and how many of those lives could have been saved by, you know, different actions and different stuff. So that was the biggest thing, Des, for me going into it, was just how untethered he will be. Been
Yeah.
pretty untethered.
Yeah, and for me, like, in coping with things that are unknown, and hence kind of like the intro about, like, I love understanding history. Like, how did we've experienced this on this globe before. How have they handled it before? And so my partner and I, we watched this documentary that's on Netflix that was essentially about the, like, rise of Hitler in World War II, how it happened, like, from the very beginning of his, like, childhood to, like, the end it went through it. So that was kinda helpful just to know, like, okay, that happened and, they came through, we can come through anything essentially, and one would hope. But then I started watching The Handmaid's Tale because I started to feel like, um, this might occur. And so I had watched the first 2 seasons and then, like, just kind of fell off, and it just started to feel a little too real. But last year, this was 2025, last year I started to attempt to watch the 3rd season, and when I think by then some folks were able to have fled Gilead, which is essentially the US, anything above Canada. I don't think it was the entire portion of the US, like, I think some cities were still, like, freed cities.
Right.
Um, I there was something that just shook me to my core, and that was, I think, the husband of the main character and then her best friend, they were talking about, like, needing to go down to the immigration offices in Canada to work on, like, finding the child that was, like, sent to them. And I see these 2 folks were essentially Americans, and they go to this overwhelmed immigration office in Canada, and it just reminded me of, like, "Oh my god, this must be the experience of immigrants here in the US," right? Where you're just trying to survive, and these people, and I get it. It's not like the people that were at the desk were being flippant, they were just overwhelmed by, like, stuff, so,
Right.
like, you just kinda have to push people aside. But what shook me to my core was them outside of their wherever they were living, and it had this little sign in the background that just said "Little America," and I was like, "Shit, this is what the flip side looks like." Because America has never been the refugee, right? We've been the place where folks can come for refuge, but we might be sliding into this. I don't know, did you watch had you seen that season or up to that season? I know you'd watched on and off.
I haven't. I saw the first season, the second season, but I think what you're talking about just rings true. I just had a call yesterday with my close family, my family members, and I've mentioned before, I have close family members. I have a transgender child. I have close family members gay with his partner, and they have plans. They have very staged plans on where they're going based on what happens. Like if Trump declares the Insurrection Act or martial law here, they're leaving the Twin Cities. If things get worse, they got plans to get the heck out of the country. And I know that people say that all the time. Like, well, if he gets elected, like people on both sides said that if he or she, fill in the blank, gets elected, I'm leaving the country. But and people have. I think people more this year than, or in 2025 ever than before. And the scarier ones, Des, are the ones where, like, there's a couple people that are historians focused on fascism. And I just ran across this article again yesterday, but it was from 2025, or one of them was like, I've already left. Like, we're already on the road, and I'm out of here because I know it's coming. Scary. Thinking that you have to leave the country is scary. Americans aren't going to be well received anywhere right now, right? So you go to Canada, the picture you just described was fictional, but let's say it comes true. Like, Canadians are going to be like, okay, these guys are taking our resources. They're, we don't want them here because they're just going to draw more attention. That's immigrants today feel that from us, not from us, not from you and I, but from people in the country. And so they feel it wherever they go. I don't think Americans have any concept of going somewhere, like, even on vacation when people have gone to Spain and got water balloons thrown at them, it ain't the same thing.
Mhm.
So the fact that that's even serious consideration, or it needs to be, is scary enough. But following it through to the kind of the scene you described is, yeah, nobody's ever experienced that in this country. I don't think, having to
Well
leave,
well, except for immigrants who have had to leave their country and, come to the
come here,
US.
right?
Yeah, and I started thinking about that, about okay, we fled, we were able to find safety here, but now we really have to consider that again and like where do we go? A lot of these things have occurred because of, them trying to tamp down on, whatever inflated story of immigration they have. So there was the news story about the Somalis, so like they're going all in. So then folks are stuck in their homes, scared. They're being dragged out of their homes. Like this is insanity, and that this is the sort of thing that we haven't seen in our soil in generations. Now, of course, there was a ton of violence, with the civil rights movement, but it necessarily wasn't at this level. But there were violence at the hands of going through the emancipation of slavery, where people were hung just because like you looked at them wrong. But this level of coming like through, yeah, it's mind boggling. I know that there are friends of mine who are navigating their own like family members, maybe in whatever country they are still in right now, trying to get to them, trying to get them here. And I think that's about to become our reality because this is such a young country comparatively. And so the fact that it's almost like, my God, is it our turn now? This is something we never thought we would have to experience. Like literally, we're not even supposed to be here today. We fought, we created laws, we did all the things, we did all the right things in order to not be here. But yet, like, damn, like here we are.
Here we are. Again, I take solace from history because, shit has gone bad in so many ways historically, and you got to like look and say, like, okay, but people continue to get through. That doesn't mean things are going to be easier or better here. They could be horrible here before that happens. But I just have to hold out that they will. Like, to your point, if we can get through Hitler and World War II, I think we can get through a lot. But that doesn't mean it's anytime soon. Doesn't mean that we won't suffer, our kids won't suffer, our families won't suffer. But just kind of like holding on to that. Sometimes I daydream about, like, how the pendulum has swung does, even in just 5 years. Right. So like everybody's rushing to start a DEI program in 2020, and everybody's, talking about microaggressions and triggers and all these things. And it felt like the first time since the 60s that a lot of this, what had been just kind of like under the surface, came out, and it was like, okay, it's still here, it's bad. Now it's swung back, right? So let's all agree it's swung back. You came, and I'll probably get arrested just because I said DEI. But I daydream sometimes, like, how long will it be until you're embarrassed to admit you have $1 billion? How long will it be till people are like, no, I know I said that. I know I said that in that video, but like, I didn't know. Or, just the things that we're seeing now that have swung so far the wrong way, in our opinions, that people will be like running scared from that. I don't know if it's 5 years. I don't know if it's a year. I don't know if could be 20 years, could be 50 years.
Yeah.
But I just hold on to the fact that it will swing back. People call it the right side of history. I think there is a right side of history. And so it's just, when do we return to the right side? And in the meantime, it's scary to think about losing everything you have.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, how long will it take to get back to that side of history? So you had mentioned, with Hitler and the Holocaust, and it wasn't until we got back those imagery of what was actually going on there as it comes to the Holocaust that like really mobilized the US and other countries to like, guns ablazing essentially. But in that scenario, that was us coming in, to fight the good fight on another land. What happens when that fight is our actual land? Who is going to come in? Who's going to swoop in and save us? And, and why? And for what reason? So we saw that with Greenland, that country that's stuck in the president's craw, and that there have been other countries that have sent their own troops in there to protect, because that does belong to European nations. But who will do that for us when we've always been that for others? And so I started thinking about the civil rights. So back to 2020, you mentioned George Floyd. And I had taken my mom. You know how there is so many different protests, major protests in every city. And I took my mom. My mom was like, I want to go. I want to go. I'm like, all right, come on, let's get your mask. Let's go. And I take her there, and she's just overcome with emotion because she's looking around and she's like, oh my God, there are so many white people here with us. Because throughout her entire lifetime, that hasn't been the case. It's been folks of colors and other marginalized folks just having to like fight for themselves. So there's a civil rights movement, there of course Stonewall and the gay rights movement, AIDS, immigrant rights movements, all the folks that are affected by those communities, they stand up. Now, that's not to say that there weren't any white folks, of course, there for the civil rights, but it was overwhelming to see that, wow, they're with us on this. Almost in a way, it almost to her kind of felt like finally. And so as I'm looking today and what I'm seeing in Minneapolis, and that it is predominantly like white folks that are putting their bodies up against these folks that are coming into their communities, risking lives, risking limbs, because my God, it's like freezing out there. But y'all are used to this, right? Like
Yeah,
y'all know,
it's nothing.
y'all does this. Y'all know what to do. But it just like I'm grateful that these folks are standing up for immigrants in their community as well as just neighbors in general, and like looking out and like taking that upon. But there's also a sense of like there was real fear for those that are not out there, and that it feels like they have too much to lose. And so I don't want this to feel like it's who needs to be out there for what? It's like, if you can, like, please do, but also please be careful. Like, keep an eye out. Like, I don't even know what to tell people when they ask. But I know we talked a bit about, things that we can do in an earlier episode, and protesting, running for office. But like this episode, and we'll do a later episode to really talk about organizing with a friend of mine. But I don't know, I've just been so blown away by, because we saw some of this in Chicago. But I think about also the privilege of I went to some trainings, listened to some stuff. I got my ice whistle. I was kind of prepared. Like I stayed on the lookout, but I never really saw all the things that other folks were experiencing. I know that there was a lot, like some folks that I know here who went down to the detention center and, had to wear gas masks to make sure that they, came out safe. But I have awe for all of the folks that are actually out there doing the thing. And especially for, someone like me, and because I do, the fear is real for me, especially for
Yeah.
those of us that have like families that depend on us. I don't know what's kind of been your experience with this?
Yeah, I think the people just have to remember, right? Like I like what you're saying. If you can, and it's important to you, do whatever you can. But for some people, this is just really tough. Like I saw, well, of course, she's getting a lot of crap for it, but our representative Omar talked about how like she left Somalia as a child because she was leaving the civil war there. And she said, we wanted to go to the United States. That's where we wanted to go. We never expected that to happen. And I think she said in this goddamn country. And so the right's all like, well, profanity, bar or whatever. I think Trump said she needs to leave the country for it or whatever. But that's someone like that. And I saw someone else on TikTok from Somalia say like, look, this is deeply traumatic because we've experienced this before. We know what it's like. We know the potential consequences. We know that like they can take you away and nobody will ever see you again. Like all of that is real to people. It is just not real to most of us in the United States. I think you either have had to have suffered from like real racism or homophobia, or come from a different country, right? As a society, we just haven't had to deal with this. I don't think you said we're a young country. We're so young. There's a scene in Succession. I don't know. Did you watch Succession all the way through? Where
Oh, yeah. I
there's
don't
a remember that there's a Alexander Skarsgård plays this tech billionaire who's trying to buy the company that's the focus of the story, and he's getting crap because he's like, oh, we're the U.S. and we're a democracy and blah blah blah. He's like, you're a democracy, like you've only been in democracy for like 40 years. She's like, what are you talking about? It's like, well, let's see. And he's like, well, you had slavery until the late 1800s, and then you didn't even let women vote until this time and whatever. So like, you barely even a democracy in real sense. I think we're all so many of us in the United States are privileged in a sense that we just think this is the way it is. And we're so awesome, and then nothing's going to break us. That's the other thing that scares me, Des, is when you hear these people like, there's no reason it can't happen here, or that it is happening here,
right.
and we're sliding just like Germany slid. There's no reason it can't happen here. And people are going to find out the hard way that it can happen here. They already are, right? Renee Good found out the hard way
Yeah.
that it can happen right here. So,
Very, very much so. You mentioned something about the immigrants who have come from countries where they have experienced this firsthand. They know this firsthand. I'm thinking about all of that. So in a way, it also got me thinking about the term epigenetics. So this phenomenon, epigenetics, so when I was working on this documentary called Everybody's Work, which is focused on racism in nursing specifically, but also in healthcare, I got to meet these incredible clinicians and academics who study this. And that term kept coming up about how so much of this is ingrained in our body. So the book, the body remembers, or the body keeps, no, the body keeps the score, right? So in a way, this is an example of this. So the term epigenetics, I'll give a definition. It still doesn't make a ton of sense to me because science. But epigenetics is the study of how environment influences our genes by changing the chemicals attached to them. So it can be something as simple as, what we eat, our physical activity level, access to resources, and that essentially that stuff is passed down. And so the way it was also explained to me was, how well, you may not know this, but essentially in the Black community, we're very jumpy, right? We're very what's going on? Like any little noise, we're like, oh, what's going on? And that's because we've had to live paying attention because fear and violence or what have you is always around the corner. So we gotta pay attention, right? And then my partner is Jewish, and I was talking to her about this, and she's like, well, yeah, the Jewish folks, we have higher levels of anxiety because of our experiences through history and time of not having a home or being pushed out of every country. It feels like, on every continent. So there is this heightened sense of what's going on, and that carries on. And then I started thinking about I wonder if that's something that, women experience in general too, just because women have an experience of experiencing violence, whether it is intimate violence, whether it's just in the world. And so does that kind of carry? Is that why, there is this thing about, there is a phrase or a meme or something about this guy's like, oh, men are afraid of women laughing at them. And then the next sentence is, well, women are afraid that men might kill them. So think about that. That's a little heavier. So I get that you don't want to be laughed at, but we don't want to be killed. But that women, we have this inherent sense of it's not safe, right? because it got me thinking about this video that I ran across on socials. It originally came from Cheska Lee. She was doing a stitch, and it was this woman this white woman who was in her car, and she was responding to the death of Renee Good. And she was talking about how, like, oh my God, like so many of my women friends, they are really struggling with their husbands, their spouses, their partners, male partners' response to this, or rather lack thereof. And then Cheska Lee jumps back in with, okay, so you're seeing this now. Do you remember how they responded when, black men and women were unarmed black men and women were being killed? And so it was just so interesting to think about, like, and again, I know this light, but this, even in your own home, it's one thing we've heard about, like, okay, both of us, we voted differently. You had shared about your parents, both of them ideologically different, Fox News on one and CNN or MSNBC in the other room. But this, like, hits different. But yeah, I mean, I don't like, are you hearing anything around this? Just how other men are even responding or not responding to this?
Not about men, but boy, I've had long conversations with my wife about this, and it just recalls so many things. I mean, you just put in a bumper sticker, man versus bear. I mean, the overwhelming response of women saying, I'll pick the bear. If you had a choice between them, you're alone in the forest with one or the other. Men just are like, what? That makes no sense. Men have no concept, none. And growing up in a house full of women with daughters and my wife taught me so much, right? Like, I can't remember when it hit me like a 2x4, the idea that when a woman walks alone at night, her head's on a swivel. She is not feeling safe. Never safe. Men, most of the time, aren't even thinking about that. They're not, it doesn't even cross their mind. Now, I'm not saying that you're not, if you're walking in a scary area, it's really dark or whatever, you might not be frightened, but you're not walking around just worried about violence. Most men are not. And what boggles my mind is that it took me forever to realize, like, holy shit, how real is that? That is so real for women, and men have no concept of it and probably never will. That level of empathy, I don't understand. My cat's bored by my monologue
Waking
in the
up,
background.
bored,
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm getting out of here.
She's like, oh, you're yelling again. I don't understand why people can't get into the shoes of other people. And I like to think I'm empathetic. I like to think I'm good at that, but that's an example of where I'm like, if somebody had told me that, like, logically, I would have been like, yeah, that makes sense. But I can't remember the situation where it was visceral for me. And I'm like, God dang. Another example is, I have a close family member who's a woman who used to go to the gym all the time. And she was very upset because her trainer was like physically touching her in ways that weren't appropriate. She complained to the gym manager, and the gym manager was like, no, the guy's fine. It's not a problem, whatever. And she's like, look, I'm not comfortable there at all. I need to leave. And they're like, well, no, you signed a contract. You can't, like, literally. And so I'm like, let me talk to this guy, right? It's like the classic women taking their car in to get their oil changed. Like, men will take advantage of that every single time, and men have no concept of that, right? And so I got on the phone with this guy. I'm like, look, you're lucky we're not pressing charges, dude. You're talking to me about can't get out of a monthly contract? Like, send me something we can sign now, and we won't call the police. And he's like, oh, okay. And then, of course, he responds. He responded to me.
Right.
And I'm like, dude, you're proving the point by responding to me differently than you did to this person over here, who's a woman. Like, you just proved the point right there. So I just don't know why it's so hard. The last thing I'll say, and then I'll be done, is I'll never forget after George Floyd. And I think I've talked, maybe not in this podcast, but it'll come up again, about my cul-de-sac, how my cul-de-sac is very mixed politically. And we have friends that have voted for Trump all 3 times. Some of them we don't ever talk to again because they're assholes about it, but others, like, we don't talk about politics so we can get by. But after George Floyd, this was a couple months later, the wife said, like, to my wife in a, like, or coffee, do you really think Black people have it harder? And you're just like, for fuck's sake, like, I don't understand. So that part always, and here I am claiming examples of how I learned way late in life. But if people could just see that side of it, this would be a way better place to live, this world.
Yeah, just understanding what other people are experiencing, coming from, or just listening. And I brought those examples up of the epigenetics because it got me thinking about, like, the paranoia, right? 'Cause, a lot of times, like, you and I will say, I'm like, "I don't know." I'm like, "I don't know. Maybe I'm not wearing a tin hat or anything, or I'm not just
Right.
trying to be paranoid, or that this is a conspiracy," but, like, I don't know, dude. Like, there is too much of this that are pointing to the same direction to not pay attention to. And so that's part of the point of this podcast here, is mostly just us, being able to come together, with other folks that are just like, Are you seeing this? Am I crazy? Is this actually happening?" But to your point about your friend in the gym, and it, like, the body remembers, like, her,
Right.
that touch, that could have been, triggered by anything that might have happened in her past, maybe even another lifetime. I don't know if you believe or agree with those sorts of things. We never know. It can come from ancestors. And I think a lot about so much of that. Like, now, as I said, I'm like, well, why do I respond that way? And it's either because of, like, my own, physical experiences, here on this earth for the last, like, 4 decades or 5 decades. I don't know how you count the decades, but or is this something that is inherently, passed down? And so I think that was the one thing that I remember from the 2016 election, was that, when Trump got into office and there was, like, all of this kind of, paranoia, like, oh my God, this is going to be the end of the world. And, like, we always feel that way after each election. It's like, okay, but history tells us, like, we will survive somehow. Yes, we lose people, like you had mentioned, the COVID experience. There's, like, so many different versions of that, or people being sent off to war, or 9/11, that are out of our hands. But there is always this feeling and this fear. And sometimes maybe it's just paranoia, or sometimes is it just our senses kicking into high gear
Mhm.
and warning us, or at least letting us know, hey, keep your eyes open, keep your ears open, pay attention to everything, try to figure it out. I don't know, but that's what I think about right now, is, like, how much of this is just we need to do something. Maybe we need to flee the country, versus people like, oh no, you're fine, stop being crazy or dramatic, or what have you. But, like, yeah, we've experienced too much, in our history to not pay attention to this and figure out something to, I don't know, help it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you just got to be alert to it all. You have to. I just saw something. I read something. I don't know if it was yesterday or today, about how we're not wired for all of this. I mean, that's the other thing, Des. It's the way we're feeling so often. So much happening. There's so much happening. I'm in the Twin Cities, so it's visceral right now in terms of what's going on with ICE and Renee Good and all that. But hey, how long ago was it that we attacked Venezuela and stole their president? And now we're, like, Trump issues this clinically insane letter to Norway saying, well, you didn't give me the Nobel Prize, so I should get Greenland. Like, what is happening? Like,
What?
there's just so many things. And it's really hard to not just feel like you're in a bunker and stuff is flying over your head and some people are catching that shrapnel. Yeah, it's just a lot of stress. A lot of stress right now, which breeds fear. Stress is just like a breeding ground for fear.
Yeah. And then we're just supposed to go about our everyday lives. Like, I'm so, "Oh, let me hop on this Zoom call and
Right.
talk about this thing that, like, maybe in the scheme of things feels like this none of this matters, but I have to stay focused." Meanwhile, my phone, I'm scrolling, like, it our friend Stephanie had sent us a text about this article that was talking about, you know, again, related to work and, like, being a marketer, being a strategist, and you're trying to come up with a strategy for selling this next product or whatever you're doing, and we don't live in the same world anymore. Like your ads or whatever you're putting, your communications, whatever you're putting out there is coming in the flood of this. And you're supposed to make sense of that. How? And I think that's just kind of the everyday where we're just sitting here fretting, but also like, you get on your Zoom call and it's like, hey, how are you? Am I doing well? Or you respond like truthfully and you're like, can we find another question to ask each other for these greetings? Because like I am not okay. None of us are okay. But that, yeah, this thing is real. But this podcast, it's not just about the
Group
fear
therapy.
and it's group therapy. It's
It
just
is.
recognizing that like we're all experiencing some version of this.
That I think
But
even
woo,
people on the other side of the political aisle are feeling it. They're feeling it from different sources. But I think that's partly why, not partly, it's the main reason Trump got elected, right? Like we talked about Germany and Hitler. Like it wasn't just Hitler. He wasn't some charismatic guy in the beginning that people were like, ooh, that guy. He tapped into a society in Germany that had just been completely debilitated by World War I and by the very punitive measures taken after World War One, just made to feel like subhuman. And they were desperate for any kind of meaning, any kind of agency, and he gave it to them. Trump did the same thing for a huge swath of this country that was left behind in so many ways. And they're like, I don't care. Like he's a grenade. I'll throw it. I'll throw that grenade because it's better than. Got to try something because it's better than what I'm living through now or what I'm perceived to be living through now. So it's it's some of this breaks down political barriers. It feels like, though most of what we're feeling today is certainly lopsided.
it is. You know what though? This reminds me this fear. So the first time I ever experienced this level of fear, what you were talking about as far as those that voted for Trump, the first inkling of this I saw, this was in, I want to say January, February, March or something, 2009. Maybe it was 2010. But I was living in Las Vegas and I was a part of this group and we were doing a demonstration on the strip. This was back around the healthcare for all days. And so again, President Obama had just been elected. I think he was in office by this point, and we had done a protest, and then there was a counter protest across the strip from us. And so we had, I think we were dressed up in like money bags, like we dressed up, I think more like insurers, like we like Monopoly level mustaches and top hats and suits and stuff. And then the counter protest on the other side, I looked in some of these men's eyes, and there was so much fear and vitriol that I could just see in their eyes. And I was a little 20 something at the time. But I, in that exact moment, I was like, no. What was an incredible experience, in 2008 of, the first Black president ever being elected, which is like, oh my God, like I sat and watched the inauguration and seeing so many Black people at the inauguration waving American flags, and that was like the first time I think it was live streamed on Facebook. And just having so much pride in our country of like, wow, like look at what we've accomplished. To then see on the flip side, again, this was about healthcare and people getting access to healthcare to see, and they were holding signs of impeachment. And I'm like, my guy, dude has been in office like literal days, months, and you're already saying impeachment. But what was behind that, I could see in their eyes, and that was a fear of losing like that fear that they have lost something that has then spurred into the Tea Party, and then it spurred into like essentially what we're experiencing today. But that was the first time, and had I known that's what we'd be here like really witnessing almost 20 years after that, I couldn't have told you, but there is just this growing sense of like what who gets to define what fear is and take an action against that fear, and that we might land ourselves in some version of the Civil War that we never expected to see. Granted, there's been a ton of movies about this exact thing. I think there was the movie called The Civil War. It
Which
was
was a
about
great
the
movie.
was that it was a great movie.
It was a great
But
movie,
like the
but you
guy,
don't
it
know
was
what
like
it was about. You don't know what caused it.
what caused it. But this feels like that. What is it you call a movie? The when you go back in time to show like what happened, essentially, kind of like what Wicked is to the Wizard of Oz. Like that's what we're prequel. There we go. It feels like, is
Prequel.
this the prequel to that?
God. I mean, it
Help.
yeah. Yeah. It's a good movie. To go
So
watch it, but don't it's to me does this
we're
is
not
so
gonna
much of
get it.
this the fear that you're talking about that you saw across the street in Las Vegas is the fear the powerful fear when they're worried about losing their power. That's what that is. And there are many, not all by any means, but many white people who are very fearful of becoming a minority. I have a very racist relative. And I remember at a barbecue, I don't remember, this was like 4 or 5 years ago, and he was like, I don't know what's going to happen to you and me, when whites are the minority. And I'm like, why are you worried? Like, what? Are you worried that
Mm,
they're going to treat us the way we've treated them? Is that what you're worried about? Like, and so I think
interesting.
it's in the mid 40s now in terms of the population of non-whites in this country. And so much of what we're seeing now, replacement theory, ooh, that's the big scary thing that's thrown out by right-wing people, the replacement theory, right? Like, oh, Democrats are just they want open immigration because it's replacement theory. What's fascinating to me, we're getting way off topic here, but replacement theory was they had it. They like Trump won so much of the Hispanic vote, which shocked me. That's gone. They blew that within 1 year. So if there ever are real elections again, if we're really going to have elections, like you had a chance there to overcome that, and you totally blew it, which is why so many people think they're acting in a way that they don't care about elections. But that's for another show. Let's not go off
Yeah.
another fear high dive into the pool with no water.
So let's switch gears to like what power do we have? What can we do? And I don't know about you or who you follow that helps continue giving you some at least hope or guidance to like what we can do to overcome this. For some folks, it's Heather Cox Richardson. For others, it's Robert Reich. And I ran across his Substack article that was saying, "Hey, I'm waving the flag here. The emergency is now." And those of you that do have power, who do have the ear of others in leadership roles, what having this country, we need you to speak up now. We need you to pick up that phone now. I don't know. Did you get a chance to read that
I
Substack?
I did. I read some of it. I definitely saw it. And I might have read the whole thing. It was kind of short, and I just don't remember all of it. But, um, and I've seen other things like that, similar to that. There's a guy who writes for, I think, the New York Times, and I'll mispronounce his name. It's Jamie. Is it it's a French-looking last name. Boyle,
I'm not sure.
Boyle. This is terrible and embarrassing.
Wow.
I'll find it. It's like I can spell it. Bouillie. I'm pretty sure his last name is. He's great. He's
Yeah.
great. I see him on TikTok all the time. I follow him on Substack and Blue Sky. So yeah, there are people. I don't talk to a ton of my friends about this stuff. No, that's not true. Some of them. My closest friends aren't political necessarily, but I have plenty of friends that are. So I do that. You got to talk to your friends.
Talk to your friends. Just have these conversations to kind of gut check what they're feeling just as a human, but then also actually listen to each other and listen to understand, not listen to just respond. But I bring up the Robert Reich because I want to read a little bit of it in hopes that maybe if you know these types of leaders in your world, that you can, pass the message. And we can drop the link to this in our in the show notes. But essentially, what he had mentioned is that you can be a leader by getting the formal leaders of America to exercise their formal leadership and power, and that the heads of American corporations, financial institutions, you can issue a strong rebuke of this regime. But I get it. Some folks may feel that they're, like you think about the technocratics, that they're actually benefiting from some of this, watching this happen. But that it's the corporations, it's the banks, it's the big institutions that can help pride, especially those that actually pride themselves in these responsibilities of the American public, like Patagonia, Tom's, Ben and Jerry's, Salesforce, Microsoft. You can do something. We need to hear from leaders of great foundations. They even called out some of the big leaders of philanthropy around this, like the Rockefeller, Bill and Melinda Gates, Kellogg, what have you. And that we need religious leaders to condemn this brutality, and that bishops of the Catholic Church, the Methodist Church, dare I say the Baptist Church, the Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, because this is about, the other humans that are living in this world, and that is not what is being preached in that pulpit, and that you can stand up. I know that it was a lot of during the civil rights movement, it was a lot of the clergy that was there marching with everyone to make sure that there was a safe country for everyone to live in. But again, we'll drop this in the show notes. But these are the different ways, even just in your community, talk to the heads of these organizations that are in just your city, your county, your state, your region, and call them to say, hey, something else needs to be done. We have to take as many different channels as possible. I know we've talked about, running for office, calling your legislator, getting, pushing them to do something where it feels like some aren't doing anything. But again, I know we're not in those back rooms, but these are the different ways in everyday life that we can push for making sure that we don't have happen to us what we have seen other countries experience.
Yeah, love all that. I think the
real.
Catholic bishops just wrote a letter today. They issued it today or yesterday, speaking out against the immigration injustices that are being done right now. Another podcast, I have no hope for those business leaders. I am not optimistic that they're going to step forward. A, because I think they're scared as hell that they're going to be put under the spotlight by our president, who has done that numerous times. And B, because I think all they care about is money. And I used to think that the secret hand behind the United States is money. I still believe that. But that these folks would shape things like, oh, we don't want chaos. We don't want, like we need democracy to support capitalism and all that stuff. But stock market keeps going up. Part of me just worries, like these guys are like, yeah, this is good. It's fine. I don't care. As long as people can buy our stuff and they can work, I don't care. Sorry, I don't mean to drop a poop balloon at the end. I just not optimistic.
But that's a great point about that's where we can use our money, where we stop shopping at these places. Those that are not, we say, hey, will you do something? They say no. Well, then you don't get our money.
Yeah.
Because also, like, if we fall, like, how are we even going to have money to pay for your goods? And right? Like,
Civil War is not good for business. Most business. Civil War is not good for most business.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I see their point because the stock market does just continue to climb, but there reaches a tipping point where it falls to the other side.
Totally.
And ideally, we don't want to get to that point, but here we are. But again, vote with your money, where you spend your money. It's hard. It's getting harder to do because it feels like everything is,
Yeah.
implicit in part of this. I read an article about, hey, check your stocks, like check that in that 401k, that IRA. What are you invested in? Are you funding this thing? There's just so many different steps we have to
Oh,
take. But those are, again, all of the small things that we can do on an individual level to show what we mean and that we don't want this type of what feels like could be collapse. But I don't know. But I don't know.
no.
We should probably wrap before we
We're
spiral.
spiraling even more. That's fine. It's what this was for. This was our table talk throwback, Des. Those who know, they know.
Back.
Yeah, little table talk. Okay, woo. We'd love to hear from people, by the way. How are they coping with what's going on? How are they dealing with things? If you've got a group that you use online or in person, in real life, if you've got resources that you fall back on. A lot of people journal. Journal helps me a ton. When I see something online and I just want to like throw sharp objects, writing it down helps so much. Now, unfortunately, the world gets to see that stuff because I'm putting in my Substack newsletter, but I try to keep the most of it in my journal.
It's your live journal.
This is my live journal. All right. So should we wrap? Are we in a good place to wrap, you think?
We should. And we're on YouTube. We're on Spotify. We're on the things. They now have comment sections. So yes, please let us know in the comment section how you're coping, any tools, any resources that you've come across to support this, and just kind of help us, I don't know, just survive. And please rate us 5 stars.
5
So people can
stars.
find us.
5 stars for doom and gloom and fear. But we're here to help.
Fear.
That's what
And
we're
hope.
here to do.
A little bit of hope at the end.
Yeah, well, we're trying to, just by sharing our own fears, it brings people in. We're trying to bring you in. All right. Well, you heard all the good stuff. Des, thank you. That was a lot of sharing, so thank you. Really appreciate it. On behalf of Bearing 287, the sponsor of our show, for I'm Not Even Supposed to Be Here, thanks for joining us. We will see you next time.